Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshaya Bhutale Himate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namne Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Ashatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Jaya Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Gurudev Gurudev, Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Hare Krishna. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmityam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamahyam Dadati Subhadantikam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So now, can you give me control of the screen because I have some sort of slides or whatever?
Sasha, please go ahead.
Or do I just, I go like this, I guess. I do it then, I think. Is that it? You can see that? Okay. So this is the verse that we're discussing today, Bhagavad-gita, chapter 1, verse 30. It says, Nacha shaknom yuvastatum brahmativa chame mana nimittani chapashyami viparitani keshava. Nacha shaknom yuvastatum brahmativa chame mana nimittani chapashyami viparitani keshava. Nacha shaknom yuvastatum brahmativa chame mana Nimittani cha pashyami viparitani keshava na cha shaknomi avastatum brahmativa cha me mana nimittani cha pashyami viparitani keshava. So the synonyms are na means nor, cha also, shaknomi, am I able, avastatum to stay, Brahmati, forgetting, Iwa, as, cha, and, me, my, mana, mind, nimittani, causes, cha also, pashyami, I see, viparitani, just the opposite, Keshava, O killer of the demon Keshi, or Krishna. And the translation, I am now unable to stand here any longer. I'm forgetting myself and my mind is reeling. I see only causes of misfortune, O Krishna, killer of the Keshi demon. So that last is, I see only causes of misfortune, O Krishna. So this, just to put it in context, for those who are coming in fresh, this is the 30th verse and the first part of the first chapter. There's a discussion, or there's a sort of a view of the battlefield. This takes place on a battlefield, Bhagavad-gita. And it's between the Pandavas and the Kauravas. The Pandavas are 5 brothers, and Arjuna is one of those brothers. Arjuna is the recipient of this teaching. The teaching is by Krishna. Now, in this first chapter, it's just before the Krishna delivers his teaching. And the preface to this teaching is that Arjuna becomes very upset and bewildered by being in the midst of this battle. The principal reason he's upset is that he's facing a lot of his relatives. He has his brothers, his 4 brothers on his side, and Krishna is also driving his chariot. Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, or God. Krishna is the supreme Lord. He's also in Sanskrit called Bhagavan. Bhagavan means one who possesses 6 opulences in full: all knowledge, all wealth, all power, and so forth. So Krishna is on the chariot as the charioteer, and Arjuna is on the chariot as the warrior. And they are in the midst of the 2 armies. And this, as I say, the first chapter is setting the scene. And now we've entered in this final section. I think there's 42 verses in the first chapter. In the final section, Arjuna is lamenting that this is a difficult situation. He's in between the 2 armies, looking at both sides, seeing all these relatives. This has no good ending to it. So he's saying, I'm now unable to stand here any longer. I'm forgetting myself, and my mind is reeling. I see only causes of misfortune, O Krishna. So these 2 words, nimittani, I put them in bold. Nimittani and viparitani, we'll see in Prabhupada's commentary, is called a purport. He calls it his purport to these verses. So on the next page, I'll show the purport. Nimittani and viparitani. I'm seeing things in reverse. I see only causes of misfortune. Literally, I'm seeing just the opposites. Everything is basically bad omens. Everything is in reverse. So now, before we go on to the purport, I want to discuss something else. Viewing through the eyes of Shastra. So what does Shastra mean? Shastra is a body of literature or a body of teaching, or it could also be one book, like the Bhagavad-gita. The Bhagavad-gita is a Shastra. And now I'm going to introduce the idea of science. Science literally is derived from Latin, and it means knowledge. That's basically the meaning of science. Now, in the modern context, it's come to mean something different, a little different. So, in the traditional sense, science means a system of knowledge. So, every system of knowledge or every science has the means to acquire knowledge. That seems almost axiomatic. So scientific method, which is currently used by modern scientists to acquire knowledge, has been developed over the last 200 years. So it's interesting that it's relative to history, all history, our scientific method that many of us, most of us, perhaps all of us learned in school is relatively recent. And that involves, in simplistic terms, it involves hypothesis, experiment, which is observation, and then test, which is also basically observation. So it's hypothesis and highly experiential or based on observation. But what about Krishna consciousness? Let's look at how knowledge is acquired in Krishna consciousness. First, consider the concept of apaurusheya. This is a Sanskrit word. Apaurusheya means that there's no human, or it means literally not human. Apaurusheya, not human. But not human in the sense of being superhuman or transcendental. It's something that's not subject to 4 defects. So this is philosophically, this is the way apaurusheya is considered. It's not subject to illusion, mistake, cheating, or imperfection. So in Krishna consciousness, there are three processes to receive knowledge: Anumana, Pratyaksha, and Shabda. So this is very technical. We're getting into technical philosophy here. Some people may not, you may have been exposed to this before or not, but just bear with me for a few minutes. Anumana means hypothesis. So let me take one step back. Within the various Indian traditions, there are 6 major philosophies. They're called darshanas, or you could say the modern equivalent would be worldviews. Darshan means vision. So darshan in the sense of philosophy means worldview. So there are 6 major philosophies, and each one has its system of acquiring knowledge or validating knowledge. So in this philosophy that we follow, which is Vaishnava philosophy, there are 3: Anumana, Pratyaksha, Shabda. Anumana is hypothesis, Pratyaksha is direct perception. So just like the last page, science is generally based on Anumana, or hypothesis and perception, experimentation, observation, testing. But the third one is distinct: Shabda. Shabda indicates hearing. Literally, it means hearing. But it also means viewing through the eyes of Shastra. Shastra is that which is spoken or revealed. And Shabda means to hear that revelation. So the first 2 are considered to be imperfect: Anumana and Pratyaksha. The last one, Shabda, is perfect. It's Aparushaya. It's not, if you look at the top of the page, it's not subject to illusion, mistake, cheating, and imperfection. So that's why we view through the eyes of Shastra. It's Aparushaya. Modern science is not perfect. It's Purushaya. Aparushaya is the opposite of Purushaya. Purushaya means, obviously, subject to illusion, mistake, cheating, and imperfection. So we are conditioned to have a view of the world that's based on this 200-year-old understanding of science or knowledge, but that so-called science is imperfect. But true science is concerned with reality, and reality is seen through the eyes of Shastra, like Bhagavad-gita, which we are now discussing. So that means that we don't see Shastra in terms of our lives or that of the modern world. We see our lives and the modern world from the perspective of Shastra. So that's an interesting concept. I've been considering this for some time now, that we tend to view things according to our conditioning. Now, we have our individual conditioning and we have a collective conditioning. So our collective is what we're taught in school, what we read on the internet, or what we hear on the news, or what we see in movies, or however we happen to be influenced. There's a certain collective. If we live in the United States, we view things in one way, in England, another way. For example, if you go to England, British people will say, oh, well, we like you because you have this perspective, or we don't like you because you have this perspective. If we go to the Middle East, they have another perspective. If you go to China, they have another perspective. So people are influenced by their surroundings, their environment, and people inherit things. I inherit my whatever intelligence I have or whatever talents I have. So all these things condition us, and we see things. So when you hear now this Bhagavad-gita, you may judge some of the things you hear based on your conditioning. But the tradition is that you should somehow try to hear these things and judge the world through the vision of Shastra, through the vision of what you're hearing. Sounds like mixed metaphor, but it's not really. So now we're going to go back to this verse. Nacha shaknomi avasatum brahmativa chamemana nimittani chapashyami viparitani keshava. So we're going to discuss the purport, and there's a lot of discussion here on this last nimittani viparitani. In the verse order, you can, in Sanskrit, to make a verse, you can change the words all around. But these two words, nimittani viparitani, they actually belong together. One is nimittani is the causes, and viparitani is like an adjective, just the opposite. So seeing causes of misfortune, or seeing reversed causes, or things are upside down, or bad omens, that kind of thing, you can consider it. So on the left, there's the purport to this verse, or the commentary on this verse. Uh, 130, chapter 1, verse 30. Due to his impatience, Arjuna was unable to stay on the battlefield, and he was thus forgetting himself on account of this weakness of his mind. Excessive attachment for material things puts a man in such a bewildering condition of existence. Bhayam duita bhinna visheshata syat. Such fearfulness and loss of mental equilibrium take place in persons who are not too affected by material conditions. I'm sorry, who are too affected by material conditions. So here in Prabhupada's commentary, the first couple of paragraphs here, due to his impatience, he was unable to stay on the battlefield. Impatience also, in this sense, it's kind of an old sense of the word impatience, meaning due to his agitation, he was unable to stay on the battlefield. His mind was going everywhere, and he was forgetting himself on account of this weakness of mind. Now, Prabhupada calls it a weakness of mind. Keeping in mind, sort of in the back of our minds, Arjuna was a great figure, and beyond anyone in this current world. This is ancient times, a higher age. So Arjuna was a high person and a hero, a great devotee of Krishna. So he wasn't really weak-minded, but he's demonstrating to us. So this is for our benefit. So Prabhupada explains, excessive attachment for material things puts a person in a bewildering condition. Then he says, he quotes this verse from the Bhagavatam. So I've placed this on the right side, the actual verse that he's quoting from. Bhayam ditya bhinna visheshita syat. So fear arises, bhayam means fear. Fear arises when one misidentifies himself as the body because of absorption in the external illusory energy, maya. You see on the third line, it says, tan maya yato, tan maya yato. So maya ya means by maya. So he's conditioned by maya. And on the left side again, excessive attachment for material things. So then you can understand that this is roughly equivalent to maya, excessive attachment for material things. It means maya. Maya means the external illusory energy. Again, on the right side, external illusory energy. Absorption in the external illusory energy, and synonymous, excessive attachment for material things. Then continue on the right side with the translation. When one thus turns away from the Supreme, he also forgets his own constitution as servant of the Lord. Now, it's interesting, this concept, misidentifying, the first sentence here, misidentifying oneself with the body because of absorption in Maya. So then Prabhupada says, then the translation, the text says, when one thus turns away from the Supreme. In other words, this literature is saying that when we're absorbed in the material world, we are turning away from the Supreme. We're turning away from the soul and from the Supreme Soul. A very interesting concept that in the modern world, throughout the world and in the West, we don't really have this concept. So it's not very predominant that if we absorb ourselves in the world, we're turning away from the spiritual world. Spiritual has another sense in the modern context, and so does soul, and so does God. There is another sense. Many people think that service to God is service to humanity. So here, the text is saying that by misidentifying oneself as the body, as a member of the human society, because of being absorbed in the external energy or Maya, on the left side having excessive attachment for material things, this means one turns away from the Supreme. So this is an interesting concept, saying that the Supreme is different from this world, that we have to go either one direction towards Maya, towards material things, towards attachment, towards conditioning in this world, or the other direction altogether, towards the Supreme, towards the soul's connection with the Supreme. So continuing on, this bewildering, in the bold on the right, this bewildering, fearful condition is affected by Maya, as we said. It's another statement, a restatement of absorption in the external illusory energy. So affected by Maya, or caused by Maya. Bewildering, fearful condition. Thus, an intelligent person should engage unflinchingly in the unalloyed devotional service of the Lord. This is sort of coded language. It's kind of like Krishna conscious jargon, meaning that this unflinchingly in the unalloyed devotional service. Unalloyed means unmixed. It means pure devotional service. Service means service to the Supreme, to the Lord. And rather than say bhakti, this is bhakti yoga, but rather than translate bhakti to devotion, which it often is, Prabhupada translates it as devotional service. His guru often says activities in devotion, devotional actions. So devotional service, it gives a different perspective on bhakti, and a little different than the common perspective. Unalloyed, pure bhakti, unmixed with any material consideration. What is that idea? Unselfish. Selfish. We are all interested in we all have some self-interest. It goes so far. We can become a little unselfish. Someone may be selfish. He's so interested in his own purpose that one person who is a little more family oriented, he's less selfish. Community, less selfish. Country, we can go on and on. People who are maybe heroic in war, they sacrifice themselves, their lives the for the good of others. Such an unselfish act. So unselfishness can go on. We can strip so many layers of selfishness on and on and on into the spiritual realm. And the highest selflessness is Radharani, Srimati Radharani. She demonstrates the highest level of selflessness, unselfish. So unflinchingly in the unalloyed devotional service, unflinching, meaning obviously steady. So under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, whom he should accept as his worshipful deity and as his life and soul. So it says, Bhaktya, the last line in the verse up at the top, Bhaktyai, Bhaktyaika Yesham Guru Devatatma. So Guru Devata means that we accept the Guru almost as God. Not God. The Guru is not God, but he's the representative of God. He's considered the representative in this world. So we have to learn to respect the Guru, and we have an exchange of love and service with the Guru. So it's a very sweet relationship, and by developing that relationship of love and service, we can understand a little bit of how to love and serve the Supreme. So again, on the left, you see that the purport continues. There's a continuation of the purport to this verse 130 that we discussed in the beginning. Arjuna envisioned only painful reverses in the battlefield. He would not be happy even by gaining victory over the foe. The words nimittani viparitani are significant. When a person sees only frustration in his expectations, he thinks, why am I here? Why me? Why am I here? Why? It's kind of a challenging question. It's not, in a way, it's not very constructive, but this is the way we think. Why me? Why this? Oh God, why do I have to face this? So everyone is interested in himself and his own welfare. No one is interested in the Supreme Self. Arjuna is showing his ignorance of his real self-interest by Krishna's will. So this ignorance of his real self-interest by Krishna's will. This is an interesting idea, that we have our own self-interest, but our self-interest is distorted because we are conditioned by this body and by our environment, upbringing, everything that I mentioned before. So that conditions us. But our real self-interest is the soul. It's our constitution as soul and its connection with the Supreme, with Krishna. So real self-interest by Krishna's will. Now, that's an interesting idea. What that means, it's an indication, it's taken from this word nimittani or nimitta in the singular. And I put a verse on the right side that talks about this, that Krishna, in which Krishna uses the word nimitta. So by Krishna's will, one's real self-interest, continue on the left side, one's real self-interest lies in Vishnu or Krishna. The conditioned soul forgets this and therefore suffers material pains. Arjuna thought that his victory in the battle would only be a cause of lamentation for him. But why is this? It's because he's demonstrating but we'll take it literally. It's because he's in Maya. He's attached to this illusory material world, this illusory world, this body and its relationship with the world. So back on the left side, right in the middle, Arjuna is showing ignorance of his real self-interest by Krishna's will. Now looking on the right side, Krishna much later in the Gita, 11:33, says, Nimitta matram bhavas sabhyasachin. Nimitta matram bhava. He says, become an instrument in the fight. And the Prabhupada says in the purport, just become an instrument, nimitta matram. So the whole world is moving according to the plan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the plan of Krishna. But foolish persons who don't have sufficient knowledge think that nature is moving without a plan and all manifestations are accidental formations. So this is really an explanation of these few words. Ignorance of one's real self on the left side in the middle of the second paragraph. Ignorance of the real self-interest by Krishna's will. So our real self-interest is to be connected with Krishna, and Krishna has his own will. He has an intention, a will, a desire, or desires. Our desires in this world mislead us from Krishna's desires. So if we can understand how to become nimitta matram, become instruments in Krishna's desires, we've gone quite a long way. So I'm going to continue, maybe try to abbreviate this a little bit. This, on the right side, this Bhagavad-gita 11:33, Prabhupada's purport continues on. Many scientists who suggest that perhaps it was like this or maybe like that, but there's no question of perhaps and maybe. There is a specific plan being carried out in this material world. So what is that plan? The cosmic manifestation is a chance for conditioned souls to go back to Godhead, back to home. Now, this is another interesting concept. How did this come about? Going on the left side, back a page, when a man sees only frustration in his expectations, he thinks, why am I here? So there's a lot of questioning. Again, paging forward. There's a plan. What is this plan? So this answers quite a lot of questions. If we can adopt this perspective, if we have this view that we are souls, and if we become divorced from this external world of suffering and connected with the Supreme, then we can understand a little bit about that plan. So on the second paragraph here, as long as they have the domineering mentality, which makes them try to lord it over the material nature, control, it's our interest, whether small level, we want control over our families, we want control over our finances, over local things, or if we're in charge of a country, we want control over the people and over the economy. But this is conditioning. If somebody can understand the plan of the Supreme and cultivate bhakti, that's more intelligent. It's the most intelligent. So the creation and destruction of the cosmic manifestation are under the guidance of God. And thus this battle that we're talking about right now was fought according to the plan of God. Arjuna was refusing to fight, but he was told that he should fight in accordance with Krishna's desire, and then he would be happy. So if one is in full Krishna consciousness, meaning, let me page back here, this, where is it? Let me find out. Where it said, Anyway, I've lost the place here. It said, uninterrupted and unalloyed Krishna consciousness. So here, when Prabhupada says full Krishna consciousness, that means uninterrupted, meaning consistent, and unalloyed, meaning pure, not mixed with some motivation. It means completely selfless, unselfish. So if one is in full Krishna consciousness and his life is devoted to the Lord's transcendental service, he is perfect. So this is the message. Just to review slightly, 1 minute review. At the top, we're discussing Nacha Shaknomi Vasatum Brahmativa Chamemana Nimittani Chapashyami Viparitani Keshava. This means that Krishna is, I'm not able to stand. Na Shaknomi means I'm not able. Avastha. Sta means to stand or be stable. Probably this word stable is a cognate. Stand is certainly a cognate of sta, cognate rather. And Brahmativa, my mana, my mind wanders. Brahma means wanders. Nimittani chapashyami viparitani. Pashyami means to see. I see nimittani pashyami. I see things, bad omens, reversed causes, Prabhupada says causes of misfortune. And Prabhupada really expands on this concept of nimittani viparitani, that these are caused by bewilderment in the world. And he focuses on bhayam, on fear. So in the other set of, I guess, slides or pages, I showed that it's important then to see through the eyes of Shastra. Try to see the world and our condition in the world through the eyes of Shastra, rather than coming to this class and seeing if the Shastra is applicable to our life as much as possible. Try to look at our life and look at the world through the eyes of Shastra. It's hard to do. First of all, it's kind of like method acting or something. We have to really get into that position. And we also have to kind of surrender to doing it. It's not that we could do it and then leave it aside. It's just kind of a leap of faith or something. It's just, we can temporarily try it out, but try it. Try to see through this eyes of Shastra. Try to understand what the Shastra is saying and see the world through that vision. So that's all I have. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments or?
So if someone has a question, like I know one of you sent a message saying you'd like to ask a question. If you have a question, you can at this point you can unmute yourself and ask. Or if of course if for whatever reason you prefer to write it and not speak, that's okay too. Then I'll make sure if that Dayananda sees the message.
Okay, may I speak or?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Firstly, Shukriya, thank you for this excellent analysis of the text, which is very important to us. So I believe that the spirit of Vedantic conversation is somewhat critical, right? That we sometimes engage in criticism of what one person's interpretation of it or others, not to be in any way overly acerbic, but one thing that I've noted kind of, and I love ISKCON. I think it's such a beautiful organization. They always give us food when we're when we're hungry, and that is probably the best thing they can do. All of that said, sometimes I do think that you all overemphasize, like to say that the Gita, for instance, is about Krishna. I took some notes. It's not exactly what you said, um, but Krishna and Arjuna and the messages in the Gita are bigger than Krishna, right? In a way, like one can always say in Hinduism that my main deity is Krishna, and that is great. That is one of many paths that we can take towards moving outside of ignorance. I guess my question is, um, do you acknowledge or prescribe other paths or the possibility of other paths aside from bhakti? And bhakti through Krishna, because bhakti, of course, is not limited to Krishna. I'm sorry if that sounded confrontational. I just wanted to ask.
Okay. Well, I definitely took it as confrontational. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Um, so let's roll back a little bit. Yes, bhakti through Krishna, but let's roll that back a little bit. So you have some reluctance. You've heard other perspectives on Vedanta or other perspectives on the Bhagavad-gita. So, and also you say that, well, Krishna is only one deva. But rolling things back a little bit, let's take the various understandings of Vedanta. Here we understand that this world is a world of conditioning. This is the ancient understanding of the Upanishads, and in many regards, it also carries over into conservative Buddhism and Jainism. So this is a very broad understanding. So let's forget, you're concerned about bhakti to Krishna, you're concerned, well, Krishna is this, but let's roll it back a little bit. You mentioned the word Vedanta. So first of all, even going back further than Vedanta, here's a world in which, an ancient world in which Buddhism, Jainism, Vedanta, Vaishnavism, all these emerged from the concept that this world is a place of suffering, that this world conditions us, and that we have to become somehow divorced from this world. Now then becomes the branch of Buddhism, and you like to say Hinduism. I really don't like that word. It's only 800 years old, and before that there was something else. By the way, Hinduism means Buddhism and Jainism. The original meaning 800 years ago. It's evolved into something else. And now Hinduism doesn't even mean Sikhism. But the word Hinduism means Indian. So
Not
anyway,
even because of the rise of this ridiculous religious right that is excluding people. Yeah.
so whatever it is, maybe religious right, but Hinduism has been used for the last a long time. So, but a lot of us don't like this. Prabhupada tended not to use the word, I would say 98% of the time. So, uh, so let's talk about now. There's a divergence between Buddhism and Vedanta, or Vedanta meaning the sort of the culmination of the Vedas and Upanishads. So then we focus on the soul. The world is a place of suffering, and we have to divorce ourselves from the world. And we have to focus on the soul. And this is also, let's throw in yogic perspective. This is also the yogic perspective, Vedanta and yoga. So we have two major schools within the six darshans, within the philosophy, the ancient philosophies, the ancient sciences. The world is not the place we want to be. It's a place of conditioning. It's a place of suffering, distress. It's temporary. It's illusory. The soul. Let's focus on the soul. So this is Vedantic and it's yogic. So we have to establish that perspective. Okay? So now we've established that. So if that means that you accept that, that's very broad, then you can look at the Shastra, you can look at through the eyes of Shastra and try to establish yourself in that way. So rather than look at differences in, oh, this Devata, that Devata, I have to worship Shiva, I have to worship Vishnu. So why are you confused? The whole process is to become separated from this world and to become focused on the spiritual realm, on the soul.
I could not agree more. And in a way, though I phrased it wrongly, that was sort of my point, is that when we atomize and push into, one or the other being the right path.
It's not intellectual.
Yes, I
We're
understand.
not talking about something intellectual. Knowledge is useless without practice. What's the purpose of there's a handful of people, let's say, that talk about theoretical physics. It's the practical people. It's people who apply, who are the technologists, who are the engineers, who are the pliers. That's relative to this world. That's what's useful in the world. I'm not discounting theoretical physics.
Well, I think what you're saying is that there's a lot of people who study theoretical physics, but there are more people who walk into walls.
So what I'm saying is,
Excuse me, just one thing, if it's okay. Usually, Raghava, you're kind of new to this sort of format at our program, but Dayananda is going to speak, and then when he's ready for you to ask further question, if you want to, he'll let you know. So so Dayananda can speak sort of until he's finished.
okay. So I'll conclude. This is getting a little too long. So the point is that I made this point, and I feel this is the crux of this class, is to view life through the perspective of Shastra. And this means in practice. It doesn't mean, okay, I heard this idea, I heard that idea, I heard the other idea. You've already had some kind of orientation, some kind of spiritual orientation. You're talking about this deva, that deva. You're talking about Vedanta. I'm telling you that the basis of Vedanta is to develop this perspective, to become divorced from Maya and to become oriented toward the soul, Atma, and to be aware of ahankar, or this bodily identification. So that's the fundamental perspective. Now, you can talk anything. You can say, oh, bhakti this, or jnana yoga, or well, this one worships this devata or that devata, but it's all about practice. Talk is useless. So yes, the ISKCON people are very emphatic about bhakti to Krishna, but Prabhupada was more emphatic about, forget this talk. If you don't like bhakti to Krishna, if you don't like this strong position, then okay, go back to square one. If you just like Vedanta and you're not interested in this, what you consider to be this singular direction, then you look at the world in this other way, this Vedantic way. Maybe it's what we call Mayavad, but Brahmavadi, or another way. But you have to do something. You have to do it. You can't just look on the surface. Then that's useless. You can't criticize. If you don't have the perspective, if you don't see from the eyes of Shastra, you can't say anything, because that you're not based in that reality. That reality is to view through the perspective of the soul. Now, having discussed that, we recommend in ISKCON, in the followers of Prabhupada and Chaitanya and all of our line of gurus, we recommend the perspective, the bhakti perspective. Prabhupada says devotional service, bhakti, because it's a practical perspective. Now you're talking about Vedanta. Many people look at, okay, Vedanta is soul. You have to have a practice. How are you going to understand? We have a practice for connecting to this world. Our practice for connecting to the world is all of our material desires. We accumulate things off of Amazon. That's our practice. In the world, we have to have another practice to divorce ourselves from this world and connect with the soul. We're recommending bhakti, which is devotional service. It means chanting. We chant for 2 hours a day. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We study the literatures. We distribute our books. Atmanivedana, who's organizing this, was at one point the leading book distributor in, I don't know, at least in America, maybe in the world. He was one of the tremendously dedicated people. He's tremendously self-disciplined and wonderful devotee. His wife also was a book distributor in England, and she started a temple as 18 years old. She started a temple in Croatia. So this kind of devotion, that's the meaning of uninterrupted, unalloyed Krishna consciousness. It's based on the kind of service that Atmanivedana and his wife are historically famous for. So that's what, that kind of absorption, Prabhupada used that word absorption in some place that I read this evening. So that's the thing that we recommend, bhakti, with that absorption. It's not theoretical. It's not philosophy. That's why I use that example, theoretical physics. I didn't mean to get distracted by that. The idea is that this is not a theoretical thing. It's not a philosophy in the sense that it's theoretical. It's practical. It's what Atmanivedana does. It's what his wife does. So, but it starts, if you want to roll it all back, it starts from Vedanta, as you said, rejecting the world, accepting the soul. All right, so you accepted that, so do it. So how are you going to do it? We're recommending bhakti to Krishna. I said it, I guess, 3 times. I should stop here. I'm being a little strong, I think, because it is a little challenging. So I think I was justified in speaking strongly. Anything else?
If someone else has a question, is it a good time? How about Susan? She's blushing, so I think she's got one.
I'll come up with something, but I don't have a real question. I thought the sastra will be to understand the world, or to understand, because I understand also that every aspect of of the world is one is one lead from the Vedas, I think, right? So isn't it important to study the sastra, to study Bhagavad-gita, to study other things in order for us to have a broader view of not our own conditioned and narrow view? And also, how do we know Krishna's will? It seems pretty uniform that when you enter ISKCON, you chant and you sell books, but is there anything else? Is there any other purpose that Krishna may want us, and how do we know that?
I think it was a little fuzzy, what you were saying. I think I understood the second question more than the first. Yeah.
Okay.
Let me see.
I mean, the other thing is,
Let me restate it first, and you correct me if I've misunderstood. You said the first part you said was that you think that it's important, or that there should be a sort of a comparative study, or a study of the world, and understand Krishna consciousness in comparison with other things. Is that kind of what you said?
yes, I mean, we can understand the world through Krishna consciousness. We don't, we can understand the world through the study of the sastras, through the study of the holy books. Correct?
Well, the recommendation is that you let the other things go, and you understand through the shastras. That's the recommendation. So it's it's like if you go, let's say you go to a piano master, somebody who's you want to learn piano from. So, and then he may have you start with some very basic kinds of exercises. And you say, well, no, I've already learned from this other person. But that master, he's his own person. He doesn't want you to learn just from that point. He has his own system. So Krishna consciousness is like that if you want to start the practice, you have to start it from that perspective, meaning that you really have to absorb the shastra and follow the practices based on the guru and based on our gurus, our Prabhupada, and then the many gurus who represent Prabhupada. So based on that system, that's the way we view things. Now, of course, you personally or anyone, you're free to make a comparison. Let me understand intellectually the difference between this Krishna consciousness and Islam or Christianity or democracy or whatever. You're free to make comparisons, but these comparisons tend to be theoretical. If you want to learn the music, you have to play it, and this is our system that we subscribe to. You have to play the music, you have to go through the process, you have to suspend your other critical analyses and actually do the thing. Now, at some point, you could say, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. I've done this for a year now. I've done it for 2 weeks or whatever. But to sort of make this comparison tends to be external. Analyses, it tends to be too mental.
Can I say something? I'm not looking to make comparisons, but in order for me to broaden my knowledge and in a scientific, objective way, I will have to, objective way, I will have to make a study of the sastras. Correct?
Yeah.
The sastras are the holy books, correct? Holy, the sastras, the yogi sastras, and the holy books are the sastras. So,
but the Shastra introduces a perspective. It's maybe by saying holy book it's not, it may not be doing it's not understanding Shastra so well. There's this concept, Shastra Chakshu. Chakshu means the vision of through Shastra. So this is extremely important concept to develop this vision through Shastra. You're saying objective analysis, but how can you be objective? How can anyone be objective? You're subjective.
no, nobody can be objective. But it seems from what you said that, concentrating on the Shastras give us a reality, a reality of things. And and it stands above because it is scientific. I mean, it has, in the scientific world, it's the it's the way, like you said, there's two, and they're not really very good. But the third is through the eyes of the Shastra. So, what I understand is we need to study the holy books because these are the eyes of the Shastras. These are the eyes of things.
Yes.
Okay.
The first part of what you said was a little fuzzy. I didn't get it.
I'm not very coherent.
No,
Okay.
it's not you. It's not you. It's somehow the speaker or something. Anyway, the second question you asked was about how do we do this? It's through the guru. Prabhupada explained one of the things he said was that an intelligent person should engage unflinchingly in the unalloyed devotional service of the Lord under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master whom he should accept as his worshipful deity and his life and soul. So we place a lot of importance on that kind of direction. Anyway, I think somebody else says Raghava. Didn't Raghava already have? Oh, Raghava.
Yes, I was just making a comment. I don't want to take up too much oxygen, so anyone else?
Okay, we have to go move on, I think, a little bit. So, someone else?
Erkin, this is the first time you were with us from the beginning to the end. So, was there something that you wanted to ask that would help you understand?
So, my understanding, I want to ask you one question because I am really far away from Hare Krishna consciousness. So, Hare Krishna, is it a religion or it's a teaching like Buddhism, because we are reading some verses. I think Hare Krishna has some books, and I don't know if you have any prophet, so you are following any prophet, or what kind is teaching. I don't understand exactly,
Yes. Well, you used a few words. You said religion, you said Buddhism,
Yeah.
and you said prophets.
Yeah.
So, and then when you said Buddhism, you seemed to indicate that you thought the Buddhism is not a religion.
Yeah.
Okay.
My opinion, yeah.
All right. So let's talk about religion then. So religion, some scholars don't like this word. I don't like the word religion because in the West, our understanding of religion tends to be influenced by what we learn about the Judeo-Christian tradition, which in my mind kind of includes Islam. So the Abrahamic traditions influence our understanding of religion. Now, Buddhism, when people teach Buddhism, they try to explain that no, Buddhism is a philosophy, it's not a religion. So they try to distance, although many people classify Buddhism as religion or Confucianism as religion or all these different ideas as religion. But we don't particularly like this word. I don't like the word religion. Prabhupada does use it, but we have a different understanding of it. So that the Vedic culture originated in general in the let's say in the region of India, which would be India, Pakistan, the stans, the various stans, including Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, all these, and including much of Southeast Asia. So at least those, if not further from ancient times. Then the Vaishnava culture is also derived from that ancient Vedic culture. So what we're teaching here is the fundamental message that we're teaching is contained in the Bhagavad-gita. And that's the book that we're talking about here tonight. Just one verse out of 700. It's sort of an intensive study of the very detailed study. So this Bhagavad-gita really forms the basis of the Vaishnava culture, and also sister cultures are influenced by Bhagavad-gita. In modern India, there are many commentaries on the Gita because, for example, Gandhi and Tilak and many of the people who fought for independence of India felt that they had to comment on the Gita, because if you don't know Gita, then what do you know about the culture? So the Gita represents the core of the culture, the philosophical core of the culture. So in that sense, it's not like Buddhism. It's not as distinct from the Abrahamic religions. It has a rich philosophy concerning work meaning karma, not the popular understanding of karma that you might think. So karma and soul, that the soul is distinct from the body, that's also not an Abrahamic understanding. The concept of the deity, is the deity personal or impersonal? This conversation doesn't go on in the Abrahamic religions. There are many things in this philosophy that or this practice of bhakti that you don't find within the Abrahamic religions. So that's one reason I don't like the word religion. I also don't like the word religion because people who consider themselves rational talk about faith-based. They discount the idea of religion as faith-based. So I, just like my teacher, my guru, Prabhupada, says this so-called science is faith-based. Everyone has to have some faith. You have faith in scientific theories based on some proofs that they've offered. So here we're offering proof in our process of bhakti. I'm speaking very generally here. I'm trying to explain. I think your question was a little open-ended, and in order to understand more, I think you have to come more in our association and continue to ask questions and continue to attend the classes.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you very much for answer.
So that was a nice exchange. I believe, Dayananda, if it's all right with you, and if I have this right, I think Eula Priti has one question as well. Does that work?
Yes, but it's not exactly about this specific verse, but we're doing Bhagavad-gita Bhakti Shastri class, and there is something said, I think it's chapter 6, not sure right now because I'm going through many right now, that it has to be understanding of absolute and a source of absolute. And I was thinking that absolute is Krishna, but then that phrase understanding absolute and source of absolute makes like absolute and Krishna. So I'm a little bit, if you could comment on that.
Well, in this sense, what I'm hearing from this is I don't think this concept is so often presented in that way, but there's three perspectives on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a verse: Vedanti tattvadas tattvam yad jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. You should, if you're doing Bhakti Shastra, you should study that verse. Do you know, Atma, what that's in the second chapter or something? First canto.
I don't know. I know the verse. I have it memorized, but I'm not sure where it's found.
Yeah.
But Subhangada is next to me. She's looking it up while you're speaking. So I'll report to you.
You can look it up. But it's an important verse, especially if you're studying the fundamental philosophy of Krishna consciousness. I know it's from the Bhagavatam, and that's not part of the Bhakti Shastri, but still, this is it's an extremely important verse in our basic philosophy. So that means Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti Shabdite. It means that we talk of the Supreme Lord as Brahma, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So that means Bhagavan means the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and Paramatma means the Super Soul, and Brahma means the Absolute, as you're discussing. So the Absolute, or the Supreme Impersonal aspect of the Supreme, and then the source of that Absolute, which is Krishna. So this is the way I'm understanding that perspective.
Prabhu, first canto, second chapter, text 11.
So you can make a little note of that, and you can look at that, maybe read that verse in that purport. But that's my answer to the question, that the absolute being the absolute, which is an impersonal understanding of the Supreme. You just say absolute, it's not specific. It's, yes, absolute, it is on the high, you would say that's on the highest level. So yes, Brahma, or the impersonal aspect of the Supreme, is on the highest level, but Krishna is the source of the absolute. It's the same Supreme. Badanti tattvadas tattvam yajnanam advayam. It's advaya, means it's not dual. They're one. Brahma, Paramatma, and Bhagavan are one. And at the same time, there's that distinction between them. Is that okay?
So Bhagavan is Krishna.
Yes.
And he is also part of, he is superior, like supreme, no. He is, so the
Yes, if you look
Bhagavan, Paramatma, Brahman and Paramatma, they all absolute. And Bhagavan is what everything comes from.
Yes.
And in the same time,
Bhagavan is the source of everything.
Right.
But the impersonal absolute, the Brahman, is absolute. So, but Bhagavan is the source of Brahman, even.
Yes. Thank you.
Dayananda Prabhu, I was informed that Carmen Gloria has a quick question. should we just do that quick? It's just a smaller group of us. So I was thinking probably people would be happy to hear Carmen Gloria ask one last question. If you have time for that yourself, Dayananda Prabhu.
Oh, yes, yes. I'll try to give a short answer too.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for a very enlightening discussion. My question is, through this uninterrupted absorption on the soul of Krishna, could we indirectly also serve some humanitarian situations or causes? Is there a total one thing or the other, or could somehow through serving God, we could also serve some fellow beings who may need our help? That's my question.
Yes. Well, yes and no. I used to, in the world, before I retired, I used to work as a consultant, and they taught us that the best answer is it depends. So yes and no. In the Gita, Krishna talks about different levels of, you can say service, different levels of service. And the idea of spiritual life is to become divorced or to become liberated from the material sphere. And that includes from thinking of ourselves as the body and identifying ourselves with humanity. So some people say that a big problem with the environment, destruction of the environment, is that we identify too strongly as humans, and we make the rights of humans so important that we discount the rights of nature. So to think that service of family or community is better than being a selfish person, yes, that's good. And Krishna acknowledges in the Gita that, yes, refine your idea of service, but it goes beyond humanity and it goes beyond even nature. And we can elevate our service even to a spiritual level. So I'll leave it there. How's that?
Thank you. Perfect.
Okay. So let's I think that's we'll consider that a completion of Dayananda's Prabhu's discourse for this evening.